Welcome to Grablives, everybody. Just to start off with the disclaimer, everything we say and do does not reflect the City of Los Angeles Fire Department and our team member, Frontline Behavioral Wellness. Frontline's approach is to treat firefighters, first responders, and veterans with PTSD, PTSI, anxiety, depression, any mental health issue. You got it. They're here to support it. And their innovative approach and using all different types of ways to bring the body, mind, spirit together to find balance and harmony and in a safe way. Reach out to Frontline Behavioral Wellness if you know someone who needs help, or if you need help, reach out to them. And their main focus is to use this hotline. It's 661-877-7241. And this is a confidential hotline for first responders, and it's dedicated just for that, and it's confidential. And if you are in crisis, or if you know someone who is in crisis, call this number, and it's going to help. If you just need a little bit of help, looking for some therapy, looking for someone to talk to, they have a peer support group program just through S.I.R.E.N and also Frontline. So reach out to them if you need help. Today's episode is a very special guest, Angela Graham. She is a retired firefighter who started this program called the S.I.R.E.N project, like sirens going off, right? And she has this program to help firefighters find alternative measures of healing through psychedelic therapy or entheogenic therapy, which she has these retreat centers to send people to go do these medicines that help reverse PTSI, PTSD, and really find this method of healing that is much more rapid than going to a therapist. A lot of this stuff can be, subjective, but the studies have shown, and we'll go about more of that in this episode. It was a really powerful episode to you can find out, what does this medicine do, and are these medicines? And Angela was such a bright light and was a very wonderful guest. She drove down here from upstate California to come down to be a guest, and reached out to Grablives to just express this movement that she's creating in an effort to find a solution with this crisis we're dealing with mental health issues with firefighters. I think we all can agree that we're tired of these folded flags, of those phone calls, those text messages from that one person who you never thought would do it, committed suicide, or died by suicide. I hate seeing that word committed, but we're tired of it. And this is an innovative way of seeing a new pathway to healing. So please stay tuned to this very educational and fascinating topic of finding healing. Stay tuned. Thank you. Welcome everyone to Grablives, and today is a special episode with my special guest Angela Graham, who has the S.I.R.E.N project, which we'll get into what that is, and really seeing the different course of healing. And we're going to go into so many different details on this special episode of what healing is through means of psychedelic therapy. And that word is kind of a misnomer to many, and understanding that these medicines that have been used for thousands of years are, really on the back burner of understanding like this way of really healing people and their PTSD and finding the true self, and that discovery or excavation of what that is for each person individually on a spiritual level, emotional level, mental level, and biological level. These medicines have this capacity to really shift things for people at a rapid rate and transform at a rapid rate your family, those around you, your coworkers, without you even knowing it. So this is a very, very special episode, and I'd love to introduce Angela here. So thank you, Angela, for showing up.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah. So if you don't mind giving an introduction of, your story and where you come from and all that stuff.
I'm California native. I was firefighter for 17 years with Santa Clara County, and was a Division I and professional softball player before that.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I'd like to think I was pretty good under pressure, which is my own little defense mechanism, right? Because you feel like when you're having issues mentally or emotionally, that you're not cut out for the job, that maybe you're not good enough at handling pressure. And I don't think that's the case. I think you have an injury and you need to heal. And through my journey of trying to find healing, I tried, I'm pretty sure, every single modality legally available: group therapy, talk therapy, CB, cognitive behavioral therapy. EMDR is the go-to for trauma for many people. Problem is first responders have developed, many of us have developed this little coping mechanism called dissociation. And that makes EMDR pretty much useless. People who administer EMDR, there's several that say, no, there's ways we can get you through it if you dissociate. But I wasn't able to figure that out. So in my search to find healing, to be a better mom, I was definitely struggling, had this suicide ideation, went to some pretty dark places. I was a single mom for the first 5 years of my son's life. And luckily my husband, through his little dog training world, knew dog handlers for some special forces operators. And the veteran community is probably 10 years ahead when it comes to helping their people with mental health. And they had already discovered plant medicine, and they already had nonprofits functioning and sending vets. And so we were able to connect with a group called the Mission Within. And I was able to do my first journey. Paid for it myself. It's not cheap. It's getting more expensive as the years go by. And I came back and I just realized, oh my gosh, I'm able to be the mom that I wanted to be. I was able to be patient and present, and it was just such an amazing discovery. And I turned to my husband and said, it's ridiculous that this isn't legal or accessible. I mean, not everyone can afford this. We need to do something about that. And so we started the S.I.R.E.N project. And so we raise money and organize retreats, and we send first responders and their spouses to go and find healing with plant medicine. Specifically, we use psilocybin and 5-MEO, known as, magic mushrooms and the toad. I really like that combination. There's lots of opinions out there for different medicines, but that's the ones we are using currently, and we're having a lot of success.
Okay, wow. We're gonna have to break some of that down, especially with the situation going on with disassociation. Disassociating, you're really losing this concept with yourself. You're almost detaching from your truest self, and at a very intricate level, to where there's almost two sides, like a Jekyll and Hyde experience. And with that, I've dealt with that myself. And then on top of hypervigilance, having to learn dissociation with hypervigilance, I mean, you can go crazy. So a part of that is kind of unraveling the self in a way, piece by piece. And it takes time, especially when you're working this type of career, when you're working, 24-hour shifts, 96-hour shifts, and so on and so forth. You start adding to this pile on your plate already. It can be really, really detrimental to your mental health, emotional health, to where you're so numb, to where you can't feel anymore. You don't even know who you are anymore. So something like this, where you're gonna have to pay out of your own pocket to go sit with some random person who's showing you your truth through medicine at a rapid process of understanding. That's an experience that just leads you to the answers. And I'm really fascinated about your journey and how you've been able to, especially your first journey. If you don't mind explaining anything about that and how it showed you.
It was interesting. Like I'd mentioned before, I've never done drugs. Wasn't my thing. And then here I was flying down to San Diego to get smuggled across the border to go do drugs with some people I'd never met before, just trusting that everything was going to be okay. And luckily it was. I happened to connect with amazing people. Dr. Andrea Lucy actually ran that retreat through Mission Within. She is now the main organizer for our retreats that we host. So we went down there and did the same thing. We did the psilocybin and then the toad. And I have trouble letting go of control. And the medicine was absolutely teaching me. I was hoping, I had expectations. And you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to just prepare and let go. And the psilocybin, I had colors. I didn't have visions. I was expecting my grandma to come and tell me something profound. And it was nothing like that. I was highly disappointed, to be honest. And I was not enjoying the journey. And I think that the medicine was trying to teach me that's because you just need to let go and stop trying to control it, looking back now. And I saw certain colors specific to chakras, actually. It was explained to me. Dr. Andrea was telling me the colors I was seeing were in association. I saw a lot of blue, and that's the throat chakra. And you'll hear me cough frequently. I have a lung injury. It's called reactive airway disease from smoke inhalation. And when I was under psilocybin, I could see all these blues. And she's like, that's your throat chakra. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. And then the toad, there are varying opinions out there as far as whether it's a great experience or not. My husband and I are polar opposites. And he thinks it's amazing. It's the God molecule. It's a profound experience. For me, I absolutely know what it feels like to suffocate and die. I was fighting it and I couldn't let go to navigate, but it was amazing once I figured out how to let go. You could feel such a release. Like I think I told you, I went under 5 times to try to let it all out because once I figured it out, I was like, oh, that's how you let go of the dark spots. And I don't know how else to explain it. And you could the most relaxed your body can be is actually when you not just let go, but exhale. I mean, what do you do when you're scared? You go, and you breathe in. All right. The relaxation comes on the exhalation. And if you can find the bottom of that where you're not flexing any muscles to hold any air and just sit and find peace, that is when your body is totally relaxed. And I found under the toad, it taught me that. And if you could just sit there in that relaxation, the tension would just sort of dissipate. And in my mind's eye, under the toad, I remember seeing this sort of blue steam come off my chest. And Andrea said under the medicine, she's like, no, you could actually see steam coming off of your chest in actuality, which I thought was pretty trippy. Again, I'm not into the too hippy dippy, but whatever. And she goes, yeah, that's why they say you have to get it off your chest. It's like, oh, it's not just an expression. So that was pretty amazing. And I know they talk about the pink cloud afterwards, but it's kind of the ideal. To maintain that, it takes a lot of work and you have to be willing to put in that work. And you may have to go back more than one time to figure out how to stay there. But yeah, it was an amazing experience. Like I said, we came back and we were like, nope, we have to start this nonprofit.
So a couple of the things that you're mentioning is really profound is like the idea of surrender. And that's part of letting go is the complete on your knees surrendering place. And it has to do with relaxation in that place. And that place too, like you're talking about the breath and how powerful that is, because the power of the breath teaches us that within each cycle of that contraction and relaxation phase, we learn that it's essential to life. You know, you're taking in a breath in and bringing life into yourself, and you're exhaling all the toxins out of yourself. And, you know, these medicines teach the simplicity of those things, especially the breath, and learning how to let go of things that don't serve you any longer. And so I just want to go into kind of what psilocybin is, number one, and then also what is, you know, bufo or the toad, which is 5-MEO DMT. And so from what I understand now from my teachings of what I learned from Terence McKenna and Dr. Timothy Leary and Ram Dass, you know, these people who are pioneering this field quite some time ago now. And they would have these experiences that would teach about, you know, consciousness, human consciousness, and learning that there's something beyond human consciousness. And particularly dimethyltryptamine, which is DMT, is something that is dormant within all of us humans, all plants, all animals, all mammals. We have this molecule that's inside of us that through human experiences, you can excrete this during a deep REM cycle through people who have the experiences of astral projection or out of body experiences, to where they're accessing this different realm that's outside of our human bodies. And aside from that too, is when you die, you have these near death experiences. Same thing is secreted. So there's many stories you give. I highly recommend you just YouTube near death experiences, and people will explain what happens during these experiences when they go on the other side. And they're all the same story, the same expression. Yeah. You know, and this molecule, dimethyltryptamine, it has this power of what's been coined as the God molecule, and meaning not necessarily like this, this idea of what we see as God, right? As this like man that's sitting in a cloud looking at you and just seeing who you are, whatever. This is an idea, right? But this is a frequency you're accessing through that experience. And what's interesting too is this little bit of education on what dimethyltryptamine is and how it's accessed. It's through the pineal gland. And the pineal gland is like this little pine cone shaped piece of your brain that is so essential to everything. I mean, it handles the Wi-Fi system to your hormone levels, and it's going to be an access point for melatonin, serotonin, and this little molecule called DMT. And by ancient cultures, like ancient Egyptian cultures, they would refer it to as the eye of Horus, or the eye, the third eye, or the inner vision.
That's awesome.
And you'll look through any archaeologist excavations, they've found like this pine cone that's been engraved into walls or made into statues because they honored this little pineal gland because they knew something about it was special. And aside from that too, is like this pineal gland that's making this essential for you is like if it becomes calcified, now you're losing touch through like accessing these things through dreams and etc. And through meditation and those things as well. And things can block your pineal gland. Like fluoride has been one of the main cursors that calcifies your pineal gland. So there's theories that, the government puts fluoride in your water and your toothpaste to calcify that, to keep you from lifting the veil and seeing the truth. That's a whole nother conspiracy.
That's a whole other podcast. That's over my head.
Right. So, but going back into, what you're talking about is the first time I had ever heard of the toad was through Mike Tyson.
Oh, really?
Yeah. He had, everyone knows Mike Tyson, right?
Yeah. I knew he did it. And it was life-changing for him.
Yeah. And Mike Tyson talks about it freely, that it changed his life. And everyone knows Mike Tyson as like this killer, in the ring, and he was an angry person. And him doing this toad experience completely changed his perspective. It changed his life to where he's a totally different person now. So I highly recommend, if you ever get a chance, listen to his expression on what this toad did to his life.
I've seen it. It's so Dr. Lucy says when she was working with the military, and they have the room of the veterans that have been blown up. Obviously, you're going to have some psychological issues if you're blown up and you've lost limbs. And the sign on the door before they'd walk in the room says, "Hurt dogs bite." And that's true of people too. Most people who are angry and want to hurt people are hurting themselves. Wow. They're hurting on the inside and they need healing. As far as the DMT and getting it to release, I was really amazed when I did some breath work. You almost hyperventilate yourself with some of the intense breath work. And all of a sudden you start to feel those same sensations, like when you're under Aya or when you're under the toad. You really do have it in you. So if you're taking it, they can't test you for it because it's already in your body. So good luck with that. Good luck with doing a drug test for this, right? And let me tell you, I remember when I first came back from my journey, and the first thing I said, and pardon my language, but I said, there is no reason for this shit to be illegal. No one's doing this for fun. It was not fun. It was not an enjoyable experience. Because like I said, I'd never really done drugs. When I did the psilocybin, I just felt nauseous. I didn't feel great at all. And I'd heard people talk about how great the toad was. So I was like, yeah, finally, I'm going to finally have a drug experience where it feels amazing. And I did that. They gave me a little handshake at first, and it went right to my head, and it did not feel good. And I just remember thinking, oh, hell, here we go. So it shouldn't be illegal. It's not fun. No one is doing this to get high. You know what I mean? Like, it's a healing experience, and it can be intense, and it can be brutal. The death that you're experiencing is your ego. Your ego is fighting tooth and nail to keep control of your mind. Your mind, forgetting the person who said it, but your mind is a great tool and a poor leader. And I think with people who've been through trauma and that are hurting and that are angry and are acting out, their ego is taken over and their mind is now running the show rather than themselves. And I think the medicine helps kill that ego so that the true self can take back over and use the mind as a tool.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a common thread of the term ego death.
Right.
Right. And, I don't necessarily believe that ego death is the goal here, because an ego is still an expression of the soul. So we have to honor that. That part is once you go into a balanced, well-groomed ego, it can be your friend. Because many times, especially as a firefighter, my ego helped me to get through those tough times in training.
Oh, for sure.
And those tough circumstances. So it became this relationship that was healthy. But I've also had unhealthy relationships with my ego that caused a lot of impulse issues that I had to realize, like, hey, there's a situation where you have to parent the ego in a certain way, and learning how to make sure it knows who's boss in a way, but at a very at a different scale of not like making it a fight,
right?
Because you could also fight yourself and it becomes a whole thing. But part of this is that there's parts of the ego that needs to die off or shed in order for you to have this true experience with yourself, which is at a soul level, or your higher self, which it's been referred to. And in these experiences, once you have your truest self talking to you about your life and teaching you about what it's been trying to tell you this entire time, you've missed the point, you've missed the mark, and we've been teaching you and telling you you're not listening. Those are the parts of the ego that really need to shed and really let go of in order for you to feel an authentic, truest self for what needs to come through. You talk about the mind and how, it's not a great master, but it is still a part of who we are. And so we have to learn how to navigate within it. And a lot of times we've lost this inner sense of knowing with ourselves of what's true, what's not. And you walk through your life through a labyrinth of illusions. Now, how do you walk through your life that way? By, being controlled by your mind and intrusive thoughts and this and that. Because later down the road, if you're disassociative, then you have a suicide ideation. Now it's a slippery slope.
And I think that's where I'm going with that as far as the ego death is. The mind is in charge. You're letting the mind run where it wants. You're letting the ego take over and you want to be in control. So the person who's trying, like me, I'm trying to be in control of everything. And I think the medicine teaches you just have to let go. You can't control everything. And sometimes you just have to let go and let energy, the life force, whatever, just sort of take control. And you can find peace there. And the problem is most people's ego, like mine, wants to be in control. My mind wants to be in control, and I'm not in control of my mind, because if you have the racing thoughts and you have these invasive thoughts and all this stuff's going on, you are not at peace. You are not controlling your mind. You're allowing your mind to control you. And that's where meditation comes in, right? You turn on a different part of the brain and you're more intrinsically aware of your feelings and your breathing and your thoughts. And that's what anxiety is. Anxiety is worrying about the future, and depression is worrying about the past. And all of those are thoughts that you aren't controlling. Your mind is a muscle. It's neural pathways. To go a little more scientific, there's neural pathways in your mind, just like in your body. You have a muscle memory. It makes things more efficient. Your thought processes are more efficient when they have a habitual thought pattern to follow. And I think that people who are anxious or depressed have an habitual thought pattern, and they have to consciously put in the effort to retrain your brain and your thought pattern. And that is you taking control and taking charge of your brain and the way you think, rather than letting it just go wherever it wants. I mean, I think most of us with post-traumatic stress or anxiety, we have like the Charles Barkley golf swing going on, right? Horrible muscle memory from the body, but it's in the mind. You need to treat it the same way.
Yeah.
You eat healthy, you work out to make your body healthy. What do you do to make your mind healthy? What do you do to help those neural pathways be more consistent? And that's the thing with these medicines, is they create neuroplasticity, right? They make it a little easier. They call it shaking up the snow globe. You have all those tracks in the ground of thought patterns, right? Going from the lizard brain to the prefrontal cortex. And you shake up the snow globe, you get a nice new coat of snow, and you can make new pathways. It's easier. That's what the psychedelics do. And that's why the integration, the prep work is so important, because you need to put in the work to make sure you build better pathways and don't just go right back into those old ruts. And I think that's part of letting go, but also kind of taking charge, right? I'm going to take charge of my own mind, but you got to let that ego go, because part of learning is I can't control everything, and I'm just going to go with this. And that's hard for firefighters to do, right? Our job is to take charge in the middle of chaos. And I think, just to throw in some stats real quick, I'm much better with my fire stats than my police stats. But when you look at the suicide rate, not just ideation, but the actual suicide rate, I want to say police are about 50% higher than the general public. Firefighters are 2 to 3 times as likely, depending on the studies you look at, 2 to 3 times as likely to die by suicide than by on-duty activities. We are killing ourselves 2 to 3 times more often than the job. So clearly we have an epidemic here that, I don't know about you, but I feel like in the last 20 years of being in the fire service and emergency services, it's more okay now than it ever has been before to say, I need help. I'm not okay. I have more access to more therapy, more modalities than ever before. And yet through the Firefighter Behavioral Health Alliance, when they do all the research for suicides, it's a nonprofit, highly support them. And you look at I made a graph with their statistics, and it shows in the early 2000s, we were around like 40, and now we're at like 160 per year for suicides. And the graph just goes straight
I've seen
up.
it.
Yeah. And, so why are the stats going up? If we are more accepting and we have more access to help, why are the stats going up? I don't have the answer to that. I have theories, but clearly the modalities that are available are not good enough. And the studies are showing with Stanford and Harvard and Johns Hopkins that this is as good, if not better, than what's out there. It's definitely better than SSRIs. If you look at the stats on people who take SSRIs, they have like 30% of people are no longer depressed. The stats for psilocybin, 6 months post administration after 2 doses, is like 60% of people are no longer clinically depressed. That's much better than what's out there legally. So I'm going off my rant. There's a lot for you to address on that, I know.
I like what you're saying. I mean, you're speaking the truth, and this podcast is about the truth. I don't care what anyone else says. This podcast is a platform about that and about the healing. I'm calling it a crisis, not just an epidemic, because how are we supposed to watch these folded flags fall into our laps, and then the bagpipes playing in the background for another person who's struggling with addiction and suffering in silence, and burying that person? They got 4 kids at home. What the fuck is that? That's not right. So and what you're saying too is like, SSRIs are designed to be you're only supposed to be on them for like 6 months, and then people are on them for a lifetime.
It's a numbing agent. It's to get you through. It's not. I mean, that's a whole other episode.
That's good.
Whole other episode.
No, it's this episode
This
too.
episode.
You know, it's part of this epidemic crisis we're dealing with. But that's the thing though, is like a lot of firefighters aren't on SSRIs because it fogs us up. We're not capable of being a bit more in the moment of when we have to act. It makes you sluggish if you are on SSRIs. So a lot of times
you can't safely drive a fire engine.
Right. So it makes you tired, and you're just really fogged up. That's one of the things too that decalcifies the pineal gland, doesn't allow these natural serotonin levels to be accessed. And part of the theme with psilocybin is that it's a natural attribute to create neural pathways, and also helps build neuroplasticity, and also helps build serotonin levels. So that's one of the huge things and factors how psilocybin has been able to cope with, really helping people find the truth of who they are through this introspective and learning about yourself, because these neural pathways are moving around and navigating around these ruts of what you kind of refer them to, because that's what they are. They're looping ruts, and when you find yourself in a loop, the same thought pattern over and over and over, how do you get out of that? So these things are actually
meditation.
Helpful.
Don't underestimate the power of meditation. I think that people see it as granola and Birkenstocks, and that's just something people do, but it's amazing. It really is. It's so easy to do. People are like, I think I'm doing it wrong. Focus on your breath. Focus on anything that is your skin inward. Do a body check. Just kind of check in with how your whole body feels. You're meditating. Good job. It's amazing how beneficial it could be and how effortless it is. And yet people won't do it. They think they're doing it wrong.
Yeah. I mean, it's a practice.
It is.
And you have to know that through practicing, you're not going to be an expert at it all at once. So with this practice of meditation, which is a part of the theme we're talking about too, is integration. Because part of this work is showing up to do the medicine, which would be, in your case, you're going to go do some psilocybin and some 5-MeO DMT. Okay. Those are some serious life-changing incidences. So the prep work going into it and the integration work is half the battle, because you have to process what you had to experience and learning about what it's teaching you. Okay. So meditation is a moment with yourself to let the thoughts dissipate, the lies dissipate, and you get to sit in the seat of self to witness the truth of who you are. And with that truth, over a period of time, you begin to almost like you're in a well, just like digging a hole deeper and deeper and deeper until that truth is anchored in to when the storms come or when the waves come crashing. Your truth is anchored in there where you're not going to be sideswiped any longer. And, we're going into a meditation practice when you've never dabbled with it at all is really challenging. But, firefighters like challenges, right? We like to push ourselves. But when's the last time you pushed your mind, to that extent? We talk about like this resilience and this and that, but meditation softens yourself to where you get to really almost have this inner sense of curiosity after you play with it for a second. And when that comes, you begin to actually see the mind as like this playful person who's kind of just messing with you. And once you see that and you're like, okay, hold on a second, this is all a joke. Now you can kind of move forward and into this more of like a confidence within yourself, knowing your truth and being able to kind of push past this, these programmings we've had through which our mind kind of just keeps us from knowing who we are. So one of the things too, I listen to the doctor of which you guys facilitates this medicine. I listened to the podcast episode with her, and she's amazing. She's amazing. She's really profound. I'd love for you to share a little bit about her practice and kind of give, an education of like who you're sending these people to and these experiences and so forth.
So Dr. Andrea Lucy, she's Chilean by heritage. She grew up there. Her grandparents were curanderas, and she moved to America, and she has a doctorate degree in, I'm forgetting the exact one, psychology, psychiatry, mind and body studies, but she worked with the military, the NICO, Center of Excellence, and she worked with all the military people for their PTSD and traumatic brain injuries. And so she's been in this deeply steeped Western medicine world, went over to, in Colorado, and I'm forgetting the name of it, there's an institute, can't remember the name. But anyways, she helped start and found all that. So she has all this Western medicine background for psychology and psychotherapy and stress and anxiety. And then she just, as she would say, the Great Spirit called her to come back to her roots. And she left everything she had, and went back to Mexico and was on her journey to help healing others. And so she does these retreats for people. She does them for us, and she also does it for Heroic Hearts. And
what is it called?
Heroic Hearts Project.
Heroic Hearts,
it's military.
Okay.
It's a military project. So she does it for the spouses or the females. And she's just an amazing individual with such a depth of knowledge, both of the scientific side and how the mind works, and the history of the medicine through her grandparents. And she's a big believer, and as are we, in not colonizing the medicine and being respectful of the roots for where it came from and the peoples that brought it to us safely. I mean, people have used these medicines safely and successfully for thousands of years. It would be ignorant and hubristic to take it and think we could do better with it in our own Western medicine way. So we very much, along with Andrea, we follow her guidance and advice on how to be respectful of the medicine and the cultures that have brought it to us through these thousands of years.
You bring up a really good point, and these indigenous people who have learned these sacred medicines and practices, I mean, they honor the the land, the Mother Earth, Pachamama, Mother Gaia at such a high level. You think about it though. You think like these people are growing up in the rainforest in the Amazon jungle, where you die if you don't have this utmost respect for your surroundings.
Who thought to lick a toad? Let's go grab that toad and lick it. Like, seriously, what are you?
Yeah.
I would really love to know who was the first person that found ayahuasca. I mean, psilocybin, I can see you're just eating some mushrooms and you figure that one out. But like, who decided to lick a toad? I don't know. It's amazing what those people must have. How did they get that knowledge to do that? It's interesting.
Well, this story with, kind of going back into like, they're surviving in this rainforest, right? There's jaguars, piranhas, and I mean, anything can kill you. Malaria, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But these people have an intelligence that first of all, they see that everything has a consciousness and they respect everything at that level. They don't see themselves superior to Mother Nature. They are part of it. And in this grand scheme of things, they have learned to attune to the consciousness of plants, consciousness of the land and the cycles of life. And those are their teachers, of which they honor and highly respect, right? So these medicines kind of came forth. I mean, even with ayahuasca, if you ask the tribes, like the Shipibos, you ask them, hey, how did you figure out like these plants? How did you put them two together to create this medicine? And because one plant, which is the chacuna leaf, is miles away from which the other plant is harvested. So I said, how did you know to combine those two? And they said, don't you know? These plants sing to each other. So this is the level of consciousness of which these people are operating within. And they know for some reason how to listen. And we've lost touch to listening, the art of that. Mm-hmm. So that's why this is such a sacred practice. And I totally get what you're saying. And like, we don't want to bastardize any of this stuff to now market it and capitalize it because people are actually finding healing from it. We make ourselves sick in America and Western culture.
She actually refers to it as prostituting the medicine. That's what she said. You're prostituting the medicine. Okay. I love that about her.
Damn, that's a hard truth though. I mean, that totally makes sense. And you can find a lot of pseudo spiritual people who are doing this out of their own merit. And going through, making this profitable for them. So in going into like the deep consciousness of some of these things, like you're accessing, right? And even in Africa too, with iboga, which is another medicine I've been hearing that's been more bastardization of that and kind of like poachers of that root of what's being taken from Africa. Mm-hmm. I mean, even thinking about Africa, like, to survive in Africa, I mean, eaten by lions and like surviving from malaria over there, like, and they have this medicine, iboga, that's helped them survive through these extreme terrains of which they have to navigate their lives and their tribes and survive through millennia. So one of the things I've heard from different people with these experiences through healing and self-gratification is that there is a spiritual healing through this, which you get to attune to your spirit and learn what true spirituality is, aside from religion, which is pretty interesting. You get to kind of see the truth and what that means for you as well, along with some of the biological healing that comes through, because there's some amazing biological things that are revealed to you why this has happened, why this has come forth in your body, because you made yourself sick, and the mental and emotional parts that you get to process. It's like this, people refer to as like 10 years of therapy in like one whatever it is you're doing.
Mm-hmm. Well, remember you were saying earlier about my husband and I, we're a great balance. My husband is probably more spiritual when it comes to the medicine. I'm probably more scientific. I'm of the mindset that I need to know mechanically how this is working in my body. And then you can kind of go into the spiritual side as well. My husband is much more in tune with that. I see the spiritual side through the scientific, if that makes sense. Like if you think of all of us as human beings, every single part of your body is made up of molecules. Molecules are all made up of protons, neutrons, and electrons. They're all electrical energy. So we are all made out of energy. That's a scientific fact, right? I heard a saying the other day that said, basically, we're all ghosts that are inhabiting skeletons draped in meat made out of stardust, and we can think and feel for a short amount of time before we're redistributed back into the universe, right? So in that sense, science is spiritual in my feeling. We're all connected. We're all part of energy. This is my ADHD kicking in. I kind of lose my train of thought, so thank you for going with me on that. So the psilocybin itself, let's get back to the psilocybin. So you talk about psilocybin, and it's the mushroom. And what we need to remember for people who may want to just go take a pill with a lab coat guy is in the mushrooms themselves, there are so many phytochemicals and compounds that we don't yet know how they work together synergistically in the body. So it would be ignorant to think you can isolate it to a pill and just take it, right? That goes back to the spirit of it as well, right? Everything alive has a spirit, has an energy to it. And like you were mentioning before, these medicines have a consciousness, and they can bring their consciousness to you. And the science behind that is all of the energy in it, we can't synthesize. We can't do that. So it has to come in its natural form. And I just feel like, I think that there's a lot of people out there that are probably more like me that feel more towards the science side of it. They have to know mechanically how this is working, and they need to understand the studies and the mechanics on the brain. And they've done all the MRI studies on the brain when people are under psilocybin, and back to the brain and the neural pathways. If anybody's ever seen, I highly recommend watching or reading How to Change Your Mind.
Oh yeah,
Netflix
for
series.
sure.
It's great for people who are like, I've never done drugs and this is scary. So that they talk about is the default mode. I'm all over the place. Just go with it. They talk about is the default mode network. It's the part of the brain. Remember the muscle memory. It's more efficient. It helps you survive. Efficiency helps you survive. And that's the part of the brain that just kind of does automatic thinking. It connects the lizard brain to the prefrontal cortex. And the problem is that's always, hey, what's going on outside? So when you meditate, you're actually turning that part of the brain off, and you're activating other parts of the brain. So as much as it's like finding your truth and calming you down, what it's actually doing is helping you turn back into your body. So like I said, the medicine and the spirit, it can teach you, it can help build the neural pathways in the other parts of the brain. What's important to remember is why. Why do I need these other pathways? Why do I need to turn off my default mode network? And the answer is because how often do you find yourself sitting there and all of a sudden your shoulders are in your ears and you don't even know it? And you've been sitting like that for 10, 15, maybe an hour. You're unaware of your body and what's going on inside yourself because you're just using that default mode network, the automatic thought processes, right? So you got to slow it down, focus inward. With meditation and the science behind this, with meditation, your brain is a muscle. You're strengthening the muscles of being more aware of your body. When you start to have anxiety and depression, when you're in crisis and you're at a 9 or a 10, how did you get there? You were unaware when you were at a 2 or a 3. You didn't realize you were anxious or depressed until you were at a 5 or a 7. Now you're spiraling, and now you're depressed or you're anxious and having a panic attack, right? So when you meditate, what you're doing is you're becoming more aware of your breath and the tension you hold in your body. So now when you have a single thought, because that's how it starts, one thought that starts to spiral you, you're now aware of the thought and the feelings in your body. And now you can use your tools to ground yourself when you're at a 2 or a 3, when it's much more effective. That's the science behind how this works. Aside from spirituality, I love that part. I think there's so many people out there that need help. And as soon as they hear the spiritual part, they're going to go, that's not for me.
Yeah.
And that's alienating a huge percentage of our population. So I want to make sure I can reach out and touch the people that need the science. And I was one of those people. And so the point is, you need to be aware of your body and your breathing and your tension so that when you're starting to ramp up, you can catch yourself and remove yourself from the situation. Do your breathing techniques, meditate, journal, go for a walk in nature. These are tools to bring yourself back down because there is no magic cure. The medicine is not going to heal you. The medicine is not going to heal you. The medicine's going to open a door. You have to be able to walk through it. And you need all of these other tools to do that. You need to be able to ground yourself. You need to be aware of your mind and your thoughts and the energy in your body so that you can bring yourself back down. And anyone out there who has a temper, like me, knows you just snap, right? You go from okay to not okay like that. And that's not true. You were building up and you just didn't know it until it was too late and then you snapped. So you need to be able to meditate to be more in tune with your body and your breathing and what's going on. The medicine helps strengthen and build those neural pathways in the other parts of the brain that make you aware of your body. That was a lot, I know.
No, I'm listening. That was rad, Angela. I got that. No, so everything I totally resonate with what you're saying, and going in, excavating this demystification of the part of these medicines, and the science part is valid, and if you read that book, How to Change Your Mind, they were doing these studies in the 50s, 60s. Mm-hmm. And they had a 70 percentile of reversing depression and anxiety through psilocybin. And through the Nixon administration, and the government got a hold of it, and they're like, hey, hold on a second here. These people don't want to go to war. Mm-hmm. We have a war to fight. So let's put a stamp on it, say no, let's fucking make this a Schedule I drug.
The whole war on drugs was based on that.
That was what happened. And for some reason, now you look at the baby boomer generation, they're going to look at this shit and be like, nah, man, that's drugs. That's some hippie shit, right? Okay, I get that, because the hippies were the ones that were not going to war and they wanted to be free, right? They go into Woodstock and taking their clothes off, running around naked, and people were scratching their heads when they get back from Vietnam. I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Okay. Right. Okay, I get that. Okay, and that's also judgment. So we have to understand this paradigm is shifting right now to where there's a new dawn of an age of healing through these circumstances, to where, what does it take? Suicide after suicide after suicide? Do we have to get it? What is it gonna take? More people just living and suffering and being in chronic pain? Mm-hmm. What does it have to get to until some of this stuff has to be revealed to people about the truth? How to Change Your Mind was a fast. If you can just watch the Netflix documentary, that's a good way to start, because you have organizations like MAPS that are really changing the way we look at stuff and the way we see, how the mind is working and operating. I've heard psychedelics has become a way of seeing how the mind works. It's like taking a microscope in biology. It's the same way, to see beyond mm-hmm. the capacity of what we thought the mind actually was and what it's capable of. So what you're talking about too is quantum physics. Mm-hmm. And once you start inhabiting the ideas of quantum physics, that we are these vibrational beings and we operate off frequency. If you can understand, if you just, those simple facts, that we are a vibrational frequency that sings you into existence, then you can navigate your life and be the alchemist of your life in so many different ways. If you're operating off shame and fear, you're going to live your life in that way, and everything's going to be attracted to that frequency. Mm-hmm. If you see it like that in that quantum field. But if you switch it, if you go into a state of gratitude, and this comes from feeling's going to be able to change the way you operate your life. If you go into a sense of gratitude with your life, it's going to change your day. If you start off in the morning with a bunch of anxiousness, and by the second half of the day, you make a choice, like, hey, you know what? I don't like the way I feel right now. Mm-hmm. I'm going to change it by just sitting for a second, give myself 5 minutes, and think about all the things that I'm grateful for. I guarantee you, the rest of your day will change. Mm-hmm. Is it easy? No, that's why it's called a practice, and it's called meditation. So this is how it works. It's quite simple. You just got to know the rules of the game. And when you do something you're going to go to the S.I.R.E.N project and you're going to eat some mushrooms and go, smoke some bufo, that's going to change the game board for you. And so now you're going to be able to roll the dice without being so anxious any longer, because the space you land on could be the next path of your evolution of yourself, rather than it being so detrimental in what you thought as an expectation for yourself, thinking everything's going to go bad for your life. Mm-hmm. So really powerful stuff in understanding, some of the science behind these things. And the science is out there. It's proven. I mean, I just watched, I talked about it on a different episode, but talked about, it was this documentary called Dosed.
Oh, yes.
Oh my God. That was such a powerful, it's a two-part documentary series. Amazing. You saw it?
Yeah.
This woman has cancer, and she basically does this end of life psilocybin treatment, and she goes into remission. Mm-hmm. Basically, she goes into acceptance of her death. She's able to reverse everything through these treatments. And she was in her 50s, 60s or something like that, never did anything in her life. And she had felt, she had been raised Protestant her entire life, and stated like, I had grown up, going to church my entire life, and this was the most spiritual experience I've ever had to experience in my life. Mm-hmm. Because for some reason, you get to feel this, like, you go through this, I don't know, God frequency or whatever it is you see as you're one with the universe, this oneness, which is out of separation. Mm-hmm. And this theory of separation brings us into individuality, which isolates us from everyone else. That could be a really, really hard thing for people in their mental health. Mm-hmm.
We're communal beings. We need each other, whether we want to admit it or not. We're meant to be connected. That's why we like to do the psilocybin in a group rather than individual. But she accepted her fate, right? She let go of control.
Right.
Like the medicine teaches them. As you said, I was like, see, that right there.
Yeah.
She let go of control. Back on the whole thoughts, and you're changing your day in the morning, you're having a bad day, and how do you change that? Dr. Andrea Lucy, she taught us that, how many thoughts a day do you think you have? Random thoughts. How many do you think you have?
A lot.
A lot. Approximately, I don't know how they know this, 70,000. You have about 70,000 random thoughts a day. Do you know how many are negative?
Probably 90%.
Something like 82 to 86% was the stat she gave us. Do you think that might affect your mood, the way you see yourself, the way you see the world? It's a conscious effort to be positive. It's a conscious effort to be happy, and to change the muscle memory in your brain and those neural pathways that, without even really being aware, you're judging, oh, that she shouldn't be wearing that skirt. Whatever random thought you're having throughout the day, we make judgments all day, and that affects your mood. That affects how you see yourself. And it's a conscious effort to change it. Part of our practice at home is we do 3 things we're grateful for every night. And when you do it with a 7-year-old, it's amazing. Sometimes you get, I'm grateful that I had mac and cheese without broccoli. And then other times he'll say things like, I'm so grateful I have a mom and a dad. And it's a little 7-year-old mind, and it's just so beautiful. And how does that not make you happy?
Yeah. I mean, we do the same with Paisley at our home, because I am enamored by a child's wonder, because I was talking to you guys about today, like, I'm jealous when a kid can just be so free, right?
So present.
Right. And I am jealous of that. Yeah. And that's why I always ask questions to a child to see what's going on. And I'll even get out there and like ask certain like abstract questions to see, like, I'll even ask, like, what's the existence of the universe? And they'll come up with a strange idea.
I love it. I love it, though. Well, I think it was Stanford. Someone did a study, and they asked this one question, and I wanted to say something like 90% of kindergartners got it right, and only 12% of Stanford students got it right. And it was, what is greater than God, more evil than the devil? The rich need it, the poor have it, and if you eat it, you'll die.
Love. Is that what it was?
What's greater than God and more evil than the devil? The rich need it, the poor have it, and if you eat it, you'll die.
I have no idea.
Nothing. Yeah. Kindergartners got it right, no problem. Stanford grads.
I got it wrong.
Nope. Yeah, like, it's a great answer, but it just shows their mind is so not influenced by the parameters of society. They're not in that box yet of, this is how you have to think, and this is the lane you have to be in. They're just, their mind is sort of free and untainted. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's that innocence that really makes things become so much more imaginative and has so much more wonder and joy.
We could use more of that.
Yeah. That's why it's good to connect with your inner child, because that inner child's been screaming at you for that and been wanting that from you. And a lot of times you go into these medicine experiences, and you'll have that experience of meeting your inner child and hold your inner child and seeing what it's been needing this entire time. And a lot of times that little girl, that little boy has been speaking to you. And a lot of times too, like the inner child has been known to rule the body. So anything that comes up within the body, you're suppressing. Talk to the inner child and find out what it needs, what it wants.
Have you ever read The Body Keeps the Score?
I've read parts of it, yeah.
That's pretty profound. You talk about all this trauma and stuff that you carry with you, and it's just from the time you're a child. I honestly believe most of us in the fire service probably had a little rough childhood, and we're trying to help others. That's all.
Yeah, I heard so certain things about metaphysics and the quantum field for some of these medicines. I've listened to so many different near-death experiences and DMT experiences, of which you see the metaphysics of your body. You're talking about the chakras, or these energy centers that are acting as software points to inhabit tissues, organs, and it resonates within the frequency in itself. But there is also some certain things that people are having to heal themselves through the quantum field. And one of the times this lady had picked out these parasites out of her auric field through her experience with Bufo. And so these parasitic entities had attached to her auric field and would feed off whatever she was going into fear, anxiety, whatever. And this is not in a way to put people into fear, thinking like, oh my God, I'm being eaten by these parasites, but you put them there because these, if you think about everything that operates off energy, these entities or whatever, they feed off these frequencies, these lower vibrations. All you have to do is make a switch to change your vibrational frequency, and these things will not exist any longer. But there's been studies on studying the auric field and the schizophrenia people. They're covered in energetic parasites in their field, and at that point they go crazy.
I've never heard of that.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
It's super interesting.
I know we're really big, our whole organization is really big on vibrations. They talk about choose your words wisely because they carry vibrations, right? As you speak, it's a sound, it makes vibration. Trying not to swear, even though it's a great tension release sometimes. Trying not to swear, choosing your words, your music, being just aware of the energy you surround yourself with, the people you surround yourself with. It all affects your mood, right? The vibration of the people, of the energy, of the words, of the music, it all affects your being. And I don't think we're aware or cautious of the vibration and the energy we let into our world. I think we live in a world where, no, this is where you are, this is where you work. You have to accept that. Yeah. And maybe we don't always establish boundaries, healthy boundaries of, no, this is my body and I have a right to protect my body, my mind, my soul. And I don't want to be around that energy, and I'm going to respect myself enough to remove myself. I feel like a lot of us don't feel like we have the right to do that. We're just going to go with it because you're on my crew and I have to work with you and we got to figure it out. And no, I think people need to realize you have a right to protect yourself and to not be around that. You have a right to say, I'm not going to be around this. I'm not going to be a part of that. The firehouse talk, the bad mouthing as soon as someone leaves the room. That's negative energy. And it's hard to say, let's not do that. It's hard to stand up and say, one, let's not do that. And two, to remove yourself from it. But I think that's part of, you talk about what they call it, sleep hygiene. And you just kind of need to enforce that throughout your day, keeping your energy space, your vibration space hygienic from negativity. And it sounds very hippy dippy, I know, but try it for a month. Just not saying anything bad, leaving the room, listen to your music that's more mellow and positive, and just see what happens.
A part of that requires change of habits. And you're not going to figure that out until you get this resonance within yourself, what feels good, what doesn't feel good. And that you have to tune into that, and taking those moments with yourself to honor the silence brings the attention and awareness to what resonates with you, what doesn't. And you can start dieting with these things, the stuff you're feeding your mind with your phone, the stuff you're watching on TV. All of this is programming your mind to be in a state of fear. You're watching the news. All this is fear-based shit. And if you don't see that, I mean, at some point you can be like, I don't like watching this stuff. It makes me feel fucking terrible. You know what I mean?
No, I absolutely do. And honestly, that's one of my theories I didn't get into on why is the suicide rate climbing. I have several theories. I think that HR is too involved and people are afraid to get to know each other, because what do we do when you come back from some calls? Maybe we tell off-color jokes, we vent, we bond, right? We do all this stuff to bond. And I feel like on our crews, we're not as bonded as we used to be. And I think it's because maybe we're afraid to say something that might offend the other person. Everyone deserves a safe workspace, but I feel like we're too afraid to really let our guards down and get to know each other, because that person might write me up. That might become an issue. But on the same note, when did iPhones come out? 2008, 2009? Yeah. I feel like you can't ever get away from it. You're constantly, most of us in the firehouse are on their phone. We're not talking with each other, bonding. So again, losing another aspect of bonding. We're on the phone. We're inundated with fake news, real news that's horrible, and all this negativity on our social media. Again, the 70,000 thoughts, like if you're voluntarily exposing yourself to the negative energy over and over and over again, that's affecting you. That's slowly chipping away at your peace of mind.
Yeah.
That makes it a lot harder to cope with the pediatric code the next day. And did you really do a good job? And did I do enough? That chips away at you, all that negativity.
Yeah. You talked about the default mode network, right?
Yeah.
And that's also been referred to as the matrix, or the matrices of your system. And, we're built like computers. Okay. So whatever you're programming, you're placing, and whatever you stick that disk into, you're downloading that information subconsciously. It's your body, your mind, your emotions, you're going to reflect all that. I mean, I'm guilty of staring at my phone and going through the scroll hole. It's addicting, and I have to catch myself and be like, okay, I'm going to put my phone down in the other room and just leave it there for a while. I'm stricken by, having to navigate the Grablives Instagram page, but it's like, I feel drained when I'm staring at my phone for an hour.
I feel guilty. This is time with my son.
Yeah, too. So I want to instill like this own diet for myself, and I do it all the time. What feeds me and what fills my cup is going to be essential to how I present myself and able to serve others. Because I made a conscious effort that I'm wanting to serve others and serve humanity, aside from being in service to myself, because I have to do both. I have to serve myself in a way to make sure I am equipped mentally, emotionally, spiritually to be able to support people.
That's huge. You should not feel guilty for taking care of yourself.
Yeah, for sure. That's part of it. I think we've lost touch with that part, is that if you are not good, how can you be good enough to help other people? And we're in the line of work of helping people. So if I'm sick, how can I help you if I'm burnt out and showing up on an old lady who keeps calling in the middle of the night, and I just freak out on her and just start MFing her behind her back? It's the same thing as doing it in front of her face. So, and I mean, that's a whole nother ballgame. I mean, that shit happens all the time, you know?
But yet we know damn well I'm not taking my mask off to save you. If you're my fellow firefighter, if you're the victim in the house, I'm not taking my mask off. I'm going to save myself so that I can help you. Everyone knows that analogy. No one is going to take their mask off and give it to their buddy or to the victim. You're going to keep it on so that you can help them. How is that any different in every other aspect of your life? If you're not taking care of yourself, you are not equipped to help anybody else.
I mean, that makes sense, right? But we don't instill that, it has to be taught. And so this is where leadership comes through. And, true leaders are going to see that, from a bird's eye view, from a zoomed out perspective, to know, these are teachings to understand, like, hey, I want to make sure you guys don't have to come out and say that you're not good, but I want to make sure you're taking care of yourself, because the best person who can do that is you. You and your consciousness, you and your relationship with who you are, your inner circle, your body, your family. This is a part of leadership, is leading yourself to lead others, and just simple things to seed into your crew and to your members, into knowing, instead of just saying, hey guys, it's Suicide Awareness Week, go ahead and check the newsletter and what the chief has said about it. That's it. No, that's not how this fucking works. And wait until a folded flag comes into your lap, and then we have to talk about it. That's not how this works. And when it comes down to it, it's the answer to behavioral health is you. It's you. There's no one else is going to do it for you. You have the answers within, and you're the one who has to do it. No one else. It is you and your consciousness. It is your desire. It is your fears. It is everything within your subconscious and within the peripherals of your mind. You're the one who has to do it. And until you want to take that shovel and start digging, then you're going to sit in the same old behaviors, the same old addictions, and you're going to get stuck. That's how it works. Simple as that. That's the brutal honesty to it.
Well, I think people need to start seeing the mind as a muscle.
Yeah.
I mean, you work out, you eat healthy to stay fit physically. Granted, we all know the person at the firehouse that maybe isn't passing their fit tests, right? So maybe they aren't going to take it as seriously, but you need to treat your mind as a muscle. You work out to stay fit, to protect your body so that you can do your job effectively. You need to treat the mind the same way. What are you doing to help your mind? What are you doing to make it stronger, to make it healthier, to make it more resilient? You do it for your body. You do the sit-ups, we eat healthy, all of that stuff you do. It's just a shift in perspective. It takes work. You're not just going to get healthy mentally and be like, cool, I'm good now. You don't eat well, work out, and now you've achieved health and stop. No, this is work. Yes, it's going to take just as much work to make your mind strong and healthy as it does your body. And that's the shift we need to get people to understand, is it is a lot of work. Yeah, it's a lot of work, and it's work forever. There are days I'm working out and I actually sit and think, gosh, I have to do this for the rest of my life. I really just can't. I can't today, and some days you just can't, and give yourself a break, or, listen to your body and respect that, but get back out there and put the work in. It takes work.
It really does. And you have to change your perspective too. After a while, chipping away at it, be a bit more curious with this. You know what I mean? If you bring that curiosity to it, now you can kind of make it seem like it's not as much work. It's not it becomes effortless. Mm-hmm. And true masters of what they do are bringing that effortlessness to how they operate their life, to where they don't have to meditate any longer. They're a walking meditation. And that's where you want to get to that point. Mm-hmm. Okay, so I am curious about, okay, so how if I wanted to call or email the S.I.R.E.N project, now how does that process go down for someone who is dealing with some serious suicide ideation, PTSD or whatever? Do you have like a screening process, or
we do?
How does that work?
So we're fairly new. We've been around for almost 2 years now, so we're learning a lot. When people apply, if you go to the website, we have an application to fill out, and we prefer to take people who have had some sort of therapy. If you're just coming out cold, I don't feel good, I'm not happy, I want to try this medicine, you're probably not a great candidate. We're going to suggest you go do some talk therapy, group therapy, CBT, because you need to have that practice at introspective practice, right, of looking inward at your thoughts you're experiencing and kind of learning how to talk it out and work through your own emotions. And it's just not, it'd be a waste. I think it'd be a waste to go and do the medicine if you have zero practice at introspective work. So we prefer people to have done that. We're going to put you through a medical screening to make sure that you are physically healthy enough to take the medicines. There are some conditions, hypertension and other things, where we're a little more cautious to give you the medicine. There's medications you can't be on, so you have to wean off of those with your doctor. We are not doctors. We're not going to help you do that. If you are truly emergent, we will tell people, call 911. We are not trained crisis therapists, and we've had to learn that. There are people who start to treat us like we're the crisis hotline. Yeah. So the process is, no, we are not a crisis hotline. We are going to do everything we can to help you. But if you're truly emergent, call 911. So you're going to apply. We're going to put you through a medical background and verify that you're a firefighter, and get you in a retreat, possibly within 6 months to a year. Unfortunately, that's how far out we are. Right now, our waiting list is about 40 people long. And we have 4 more retreats this year coming up. And then we do about 7 in each retreat. So we have a long list. We definitely need more funding to get more retreats out there. And it's a process. It can be 3 months to a year before we can get you into something, unfortunately. So that's kind of our process. You just email, we apply, we're going to coordinate with you, get you a medical background or a medical check to make sure you're good to go. And then we start the integration process, where we do several meetings as a group with everyone in the tribes. You know who you're going to be with. We call them tribes. And several individual prep work courses to make sure that you're ready to take the medicine. And we don't want people to have expectations, so we try to teach them to write down intentions, which can become expectations. So what we try to do is teach people to write down your intentions, but turn them into questions. What are you going to ask the medicine? So instead of like, how am I going to, like, I'm angry. Why am I angry? Ask the medicine, how can I be less angry? So we teach them how to prep before, and then we do integration afterwards with groups and individual to help make sure, because that's the most important part, right?
Yeah.
You've taken all this medicine, you have wet paint. Now before the paint dries, how do we really get in those better neural pathways? And then we have a continual group with alumni that all get together every couple of weeks, and we talk about things that are working, things that aren't, just to stay connected. Because again, you need that community. We all need community. We are communal beings. And we think that's a huge part of the program, is to make sure you know that you still have this network of people that are going to be there for you and help you through.
Wow, I'm super impressed that you have put an emphasis on the integration part and bringing the community within that tribe. It's a really important factor. Because if someone's going through, they went through a really serious process, because you can stuff things in the subconscious, and things can come up that you have to face and can be really unraveling, and you need that support through that process. But these things that need to be seen and come to the forefront need to be integrated. So that's kind of the whole point here, because something could be hurting you your entire life that you've stuffed back in your subconscious, and that you did not want to face until, let's say, 20 years later. Now you got to face it. That's 20 years of suppression that you have to unravel and unpack. And that's going to be an arduous, intense process to really integrate. And, you need that support system to, bring the emphasis on different factors that are important, like how to navigate around it, and then helping people really shift their life in certain ways. To understand trauma too, you know what I mean? Like, trauma is a son of a bitch, you know what I mean? It could really, it can make people go crazy. And I always see, like, we talked about like this default mode network, right? And like we're this operating system within the matrices of who we are. Trauma is like a virus that comes through the system. And to extract that virus, that's where these medicines, these entheogenic medicines, aside from that word psychedelic, these entheogenic medicines take you to higher planes of consciousness, to where you can go into the virus, pull it out, and then you can create a firewall around it. So part of that, once you come out anew, you've been rebirthed, right, through this experience after you've had the ego death, the shedding, whatever. The integration part, going into this new body, this new system, it takes a little bit to adjust to your environment and to your circumstances, your family life, your home life, your work life, because you will be changed. I mean, look at Mike Tyson. He's a changed man, you know what I mean? Sure. So really, really important factor in that. And I'm happy that, you have a teacher like, what is her name? The doctor's name again?
Dr. Andrea Lucy. She's amazing. Yeah.
She sounds, from hearing her perspective on everything, she sounds very intuitive and very, I guess, attuned to like how this works, right? From being taught at a young age by her parents, who are her grandparents, right? Who are curanderos, medicine people of their tribe or their community. That's important. And we all have our own mentors and teachers that are really important. And if you're not doing anything like this, you still need support of people you can talk to as soundboards, mentors, people who have experience in life. That's important. Aside from, just the regular day life stuff, you need someone to be expressive with, and like a platonic, healthy relationship. You can trust someone. Aside from therapy and all these things, you need that.
You do. I think that's part of why we have the alumni group. So once people have gone through the medicine, we put them into a chat group on Signal with our alumni, so that they can stay connected to people, because you need those people that have been where you've been, that understand where you're coming from, because validation is huge. I think that's a huge part of healing, is to feel validated in your community of people. And again, it goes back to why we're here to begin with this crisis epidemic, is I truly feel that people in general nowadays, we just don't feel as connected with each other. I think social media and our phones has a big part of that. And we've already covered that, but I do feel that maybe the numbers weren't as high historically because we bonded better with our families or with our crew. And I think a lot of that has been lost, and I don't know how to bring it back, but, we're doing the best we can with the medicine and building a community here. I feel like none of us have child psychologists for parents. We weren't taught from a young age how to cope with trauma. I think we develop our coping mechanisms, and while they get us through to some extent, at some point they aren't quite like dissociation. It is great to dissociate when you're in the middle of a horrific call and you just need to check out and do your job. And at some point you need to come back and deal with those traumas. So you develop coping mechanisms that help you. And then at some point you need to learn new ones, new coping mechanisms. And I forgot where I was going with that. just left me. But basically I think that I'll come back to it later when I find the main point that I was going for.
Talk about disassociation.
Yeah, disassociation and coping mechanisms. I had a different point. But we do need to relearn. We need to learn better coping mechanisms as a community to grow together. And yeah, I really did lose my main point. I'll come back to it later.
Okay, so disassociation. Okay, I'm the master at disassociating. Okay, and that comes from an avoidant of me wanting to go into something and face it. Okay, and that's normal. And that's okay. That's an okay process. Just don't get stuck in it and bury yourself into a pit of your own filth. Okay, there's healthy mechanisms of disassociation, and we don't want to demonize anything we're dealing with in this field of mental health crises we're dealing with. Okay. Just know that you can change it. You have the power to do it whenever you want. Mm-hmm. Okay. That's a good thing. Okay. I know when I'm hiding and avoiding for something, I'm conscious of it. When I'm ready to face it, I know that I've centered myself in my thought process of who I am, and I can go into a place of sovereignty when I need to. Okay. That's healthy. Okay, when you're hiding and avoiding constantly, and now you've disassociated to where you're not listening, you're paying attention to where you've ignored everything outside of you, and you've locked yourself in your house, and you're drinking yourself to sleep. Okay, that's what we're talking about, and that's common. To unplug, and going straight to a bottle is not the proper way to process something. And not saying and causing shame or blame. I'm just saying these are the extremes of what we're seeing and dealing with. And one of the things too is addiction. Okay, so some of these entheogenic medicines, right? They have a high rate of reversal for addiction. So that's something I love to kind of talk about. Yeah, for sure. So I love to talk about what are the aspects of addiction. Okay, and then also understanding like how these medicines get you to stop the addiction.
Well, it's the rewiring of the brain, right? Someone was saying, I didn't have a problem with alcoholism until I stopped drinking. Like drinking made you numb. Right. It was great. It was once you stopped and now you had to deal with all the stuff you were suppressing with the drugs and the alcohol,
For
right? Sure. The addiction is the symptom of the problem that people are trying to numb themselves with. So, you're healing the trauma, first of all, so you don't have anything to numb anymore once you get through all your traumas, and you're rewiring the brain to handle it in a more healthy manner. What's great about medicines like ibogaine is you can do heroin hours before and then go in and do it, so you don't have to detox from it. So for psilocybin, if you're on SSRIs, you have to come off of them because serotonin syndrome is a real thing.
Yeah.
And so, but if you're a drug addict and you're doing, I think you can do it with meth too. Don't quote me on that one, but I know for sure opioids. If you're hooked on those, you can go and do it right before you go and do ibogaine, and you'll be fine. It'll handle it. You may need more ibogaine, but that's what's so great about it is you don't have to come off of it. You don't have to come off the meth. Like you can just go and do it and help rewire your brain. And that's the science behind it, right? Is you're getting that rewired and you're healing the trauma so that you don't need the medicine anymore. And I think that's how it gets you past the addiction, is you no longer have to smother the trauma.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think I truly believe too, like, addiction is just a symptom. It's masking the hurt, the pain, the numbing, and that's the avoidant, is not wanting to go into that hurt and pain, because you got to process it. That deep sorrow and grief. It sucks. I've had to do it myself. And after I stopped resisting and shaming myself for grieving, and giving myself the capability to cry when I needed to for something that really hurt me. It was one of the most beautiful things I've ever had to experience and witness within myself, because that was healing. It was me going into it. It's like we were going into a boxing ring, right? And you got this super heavyweight that's kind of like, you're instead of being in fear, go within the pocket and start throwing jabs little by little within that arm's reach of that heavyweight. You'll bring him down little by little. That's kind of where you have to go into some of these traumas and these fears. When those doors open, go into it. And that's kind of the whole point here, is these medicines open the pathways for you to open that door and go inside.
I think it's important to recognize too that emotional trauma is an injury, but it's not like a broken arm. It's not finite. You don't break your arm. You break your arm and you heal, and it's finite. It's healed. But when it comes to emotional trauma, it's not necessarily finite. You can go in, you can do the work, and you can heal and you can let go. But anyone who's had enough trauma that has healed can tell you it's always still kind of there. Like alcoholism. You can be sober for 30 years, but it's always still kind of there. And that's the hardest part, right? When you have these emotional injuries, is you don't really have the outward validation of a visual injury, a deformed leg or a bruise or whatever. So it's harder for people to come forward and say, I need help, because they'll always compare themselves to someone else who's worse. There's less validation in I'm hurting and I need help, because it's not visual and it's not finite. You are never going to come to a place where you are just, maybe you will, maybe if you're one of those Buddhist monks that have achieved self-actualization, maybe you have, but I think most of us may never truly reach that point. With all of our meditation and tools that we have, it's just, I feel like it's always going to be there. You're always going to have to fight it. You're always going to have to put in the maintenance to stay healthy, and just recognize that that's okay. This is part of your journey. This is what you've been through. It's part of you. It happened to you. It's not a part of you, but the mark it left on you has become something you're going to carry. And it will affect you even if you heal from it, because now you've found a way to heal from it and you want to help others. So in some way, shape, or form, it's still going to have an effect on you, even if the effect is the healing from it. And I think that's important to just recognize. You're always going to have to, it may creep back up again, and you're going to have to put more work in, and that's okay. That's just part of your process of being you, and that's part of your journey.
Yeah, there's an important point where you're saying there is like these emotional wounds, they're internal, we can't really see them, right? And subjective as well, because each person can internalize something differently from another person. And however it speaks to you, however it shows up in your subconscious and your consciousness or whatever, I think monks are cheating because they're stuck in a monastery, just meditating and being celibate and, just living this life. And we're stuck in this real world. Relationships are the hardest things.
Absolutely.
To be in present form and learning about yourself. That's my opinion. But I think monks are cheating. I gotta go out and in the underworld and live my life in the city of Los Angeles, and now I got to come home after not sleeping for a couple of days. And then now I got to, be in a heart-centered space with my family. That's hard.
Oh no, for sure. I've heard somebody say that insanity is hereditary. You get it from your kids. I mean, you will never learn as much about yourself until you have a child that is a little you that reflects everything good and bad about you. And you have to control your temper. You have to control your emotions. You have to be so mindful and thoughtful in how you handle these little beings, so you don't fuck them up.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're gonna mess them up in some way, shape, or form, and hopefully just not as bad as you were messed up. But relationships, especially with your kids, those are so difficult. They're so rewarding and they're worth it. But I've never really sat down and had to self-reflect and fix myself as actively until I had a child. And I realized, wow, all this trauma that I've had, and yeah, I'll deal with it, I'll get to it. Once you have a kid, you're like, oh no, I really have to deal with this now, so I don't push it off on them. It's hard. Parenting's the hardest thing I've ever done.
Okay, so one important part of that is, we don't want to leave our own wounds onto our children. That's when we make a decision with ourselves that stops at me. It takes a great person to make that decision. It takes courage, because the people before you in your ancestral lineage didn't do that. And now all that responsibility is placed on you, and you get to make that decision to say, no, I'm going to stop it here. And I'm not going to let this bloodline, pass these things that pass through me onto them any longer. That's a beautiful, powerful decision you could ever make.
Generational trauma.
Yeah. And it's been proven that, there's this epigenetics, that it's these things that they pass down through generations and generations. And through these medicines, you actually learn to connect to the ancestors and learn about the trauma, and that there's been ancestors praying and wanting someone to stop it. And it's you. It's each individual person, and you get to make that choice. And something that I wanted to talk a little bit about, and going back, was this emotional thing, and going into our wounds and licking our wounds. You kind of talked about that part can be disassociative, to where you get caught up in a loop of your own victimhood, of continuing to look at the same wound, because that can create a loop for yourself.
Yeah. You just reminded me of something that happened on my journey with psilocybin. I remember sitting there, and I came to, and I just started journaling and writing. And at one point I wrote down, do I define myself by my pain? And I don't think I just meant emotional. I meant physical as well. I have back injury, but you have back pain. We all have our aches and pains. And I just remember thinking, mentally, I think I had put myself in this spot of, oh, this happened to me. I'm this person that had this thing happen to me, and that's who I am. And I defined myself by, oh, I'm a traumatized person, and that's why I have these personality traits. And you really got to get out of that victim mindset. You can't just, oh, I have this. Yeah, you know what? Everyone has their baggage. Doesn't mean yours is any less important. Everyone has something to work through. Everyone has their backpack full of stones and trauma and baggage that they have to deal with. And you can choose to be happy, and you can choose to put in the work and get better, or you can let yourself stay in that. Anytime you hear yourself making excuses, well, I can't because I this, or I have this issue, and you're in the victim loop, and you are making the conscious decision to stay there, and it's no one's job to come and get you out. And I think that's a lot of, from some of the people we've had on intake, you got to get yourself out of that loop. No one else is going to do it. And again, I would say if you hear yourself saying nothing's going to work, this doesn't work, and I've tried that and I just can't, because if you hear all the excuses, a bunch of excuses, you need to step back and go, maybe I'm the problem. You really need to take a hard look at that, because the victim loop is the most infuriating for me personally, even though I have been there, because you're already just setting yourself up for failure. There's nothing that's going to help you. You got to pull yourself out.
So well put. And, coming from personal experience, I mean, I would, bury myself in my own sorrow, and disassociative places. And I would, even listen to depressing music, and I would almost set myself up, make my own bed in it. I would listen to Alice in Chains, Down in a Hole, oh, yeah. That's the song I'm doing the same exact thing. It's
comfortable though. It's familiar.
Yeah.
That's why you stay there.
Yeah, and I would even contemplate and start strategizing how fucked up I was going to get when I got home. I'm like, oh man, I'm going to get fucked up when I get home. That was intense. I was strategizing about how much I was going to get fucked up to disassociate from my pain. That in itself was a part of my identity for a little bit. And I had to understand hey man, this isn't good. I had to look at myself one time, and I made a choice, and that was something that it's a pattern, and that's just avoidance from what I wanted to face, and it's just so funny because you always hear that expression too, like from people when they get off shift or they get off work, like, oh man, we're gonna get fucked up tonight. That was a hard shift. Like, dude, it's a common theme in our line of work, right?
It's acceptable. Alcohol is fine, but don't you go do any mushrooms now. Those aren't legal. Don't you go do anything that might help you, but you can go ahead and drink yourself to death. I mean, we had a chief that was in our first due. We were constantly running calls on. He drunk himself to death.
Yeah.
We didn't do anything to help him. It's acceptable to drink yourself to death. It's not acceptable to go do all these drugs because they're not legal.
Good point. Good point. It's crazy because my girlfriend was showing me this. There was like this scan of the brain for each, like, I guess, neurodegenesis or degenesis, right? I think I'm saying that right. They showed alcohol was the worst out of all the drugs. And it was like just the neuroplasticity, the gray matter, basically is completely disrupted. And you're basically causing brain damage. And for me, coming from a brain injury, I had to stop drinking because it was making my injury worse. So I've been free of alcohol for quite some time, but I had to stop it because it was making me sick. I couldn't heal from it. So, but yeah, it was showing alcohol was the worst.
Interesting.
And it was pretty interesting. I mean, even above heroin and meth. But alcohol is legal. You can drink yourself to death,
100%.
like you said. Like, it's insane. But you have something like dimethyltryptamine and you have psilocybin that's a Schedule 1 drug next to heroin. Wow.
That means no medical use, by the way. There's no medical use for it, and that's just ridiculous to me. It'll come off. MAPS is doing a lot of work.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, the first one through the wall is the bloodiest, and it's taken them, 40 years to get to this point. So thank you, MAPS, for that. And hopefully the others are going to be not far behind.
Yeah, I mean, it's rad how MAPS is doing their thing, and their biggest thing is like LSD, which is like pretty insane to me. And we had a thing called Treat California.
Remember that? We were part of that.
Okay, so you were okay. They were doing like LSD treatments and like the MDMA and the psilocybin. I was amazed by LSD. I don't really know much about LSD and how it works. I just know that like Steve Jobs created the iPhone from LSD.
Oh yeah, well, so I work in Santa Clara County Fire Department, the heart of Silicon Valley.
Oh, yeah.
Those people have been doing microdosing and these medicines for decades. That's how they were able to get their creativity and make a lot of the iPhone and all the tech that we have.
Yeah.
These people have been doing this stuff for years, and it improves the function of the brain. So it just still blows my mind that it's been illegal. There's all these people in these industries that have all this money. You think that they would have helped push it through to make it legal, because unfortunately that's what it takes. It takes money. And MAPS has had to make a deal with the devil, and they have to find a way for people to make money off of it to get the money to fight to make it legal. And it's a double-edged sword. I don't love the man-made stuff. I like to stick with the more natural medicines. And on that note, there's one out there that is legal, ketamine. Have you heard much about use of ketamine? I've never done it, but from what I've heard is it's more of a dissociative, so it doesn't always work well for first responders because we can't go deep enough. And we need to go deeper, and we already kind of dissociate. But it's legal, but it's man-made. So I don't love that. However, it's an option for maybe police officers who can't or are afraid to go and dabble into something across the border. But just so people are aware, it's very expensive, but they are having quite a bit of success with it. If you don't find success with it, don't get discouraged, because again, it's more of a dissociative and it won't make you go, it may not help you go deep enough. So if you're a police officer and you're like, I want to try this, but I just can't, but I'm also might kill myself, look into ketamine, and then maybe that opens the door for you to go, maybe I could go across the border, because that's one of our foundation principles is that part of the reason we do it in Mexico is, one, to be respectful of the medicine and where it comes from, but two, we are committed to never breaking any federal laws. Yeah. And if you're a police officer and you're here, you can go to Amsterdam and use pot probably pretty safely. You're out of the country. It's not illegal there. And so by going to Mexico, you can still say you've never broken any federal laws, and you're not going to pop positive because DMT is in your system naturally. Right. It's just an option.
Trevor, one of the co-hosts on the podcast, he did ketamine, and it really helped him.
Did it?
Therapeutic ketamine.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
him
awesome.
and his fiance, and like they were able to work through some serious, trauma and like see some certain things and realizations through that therapeutic treatment. We're supposed to get a woman on here who is has like a PhD in like something. She wanted to come on and talk about ketamine.
She's really smart.
Yeah, and she was supposed to come on, and it just didn't happen. So hopefully that'll happen down the road, because some of these things, there's studies on this stuff and it works. It's like, why can't it be marketed as much, and I've heard from that clinic that Trevor went to, that the guy said that you can have suicide ideation, come in and do ketamine, and never have suicide ideation ever again.
Really?
Which I found to be pretty fascinating. And that's like the whole point here, is like you're kind of like scrubbing your soul and your mind in like this bath, right? Through these experiences, just getting like the filth off, and like shedding these things off that don't serve you any longer. And realizing, if you look back on it, you're like, holy shit, like, why did I do that to myself? Like, I'm the one who's doing it. I'm the one causing my own pain and suffering. And we get addicted to that, almost in a way, like get addicted to the negative thoughts and addicted to the negative. Yeah, it's terrible. We have to escape from that mindset, and like escaping like this suffering. Like, fuck, why do I have to do this to myself? Like, I don't know. It's but like
patterns.
That's why. Yeah,
I think it's the patterns we're talking about, the thought patterns. That your mind is a muscle. We're going to keep going back to that. There are neuro connections in the brain, just like in your muscles. You have a muscle memory. It's your habit. It is your habit to think a certain way and to do certain things, and that's what your mind is telling you to do because it's comfortable, even though it's painful. It is really gratifying to be angry and to blow up and to get that tension release. And that was my habit. My habit was to get mad and to blow up, and then I get a great tension release. And I was comfortable being angry. I was very comfortable because it was so familiar. That's the habit in my brain. I'm going to stay right here in my little rut that I have made through the snow because that's comfortable. It doesn't matter if it's healthy, it's familiar. And that's the hardest part, right? Is trying to consciously change it. When you have that thought about, oh, she shouldn't be wearing that, stop yourself and be grateful for something. The second you catch yourself having a negative thought, an angry thought, a destructive thought, stop and I'm grateful for my breath. I am grateful for the sun. If you can't sit here right now and find 3 things you're grateful for, you need a lot of work. And I don't know how to help you. If anybody should be able to sit right here, right now, and put some thought into finding 3 things you're grateful for right now, you can do it. And that gratitude is the antidepressant right there. And it's a conscious effort, and it will become, like you said, with practice, it becomes more effortless. But in the beginning, when you have a Charles Barkley golf swing with your mental thought processes, it is a very conscious. Anyone who's played sports knows when you have a bad habit, it takes a lot of conscious effort to realign those muscle memories. And you got to treat the brain the same way. If you're having depression, anxiety, you have bad muscle memory, and it's going to take effort until it becomes more automatic.
Yeah, that was such a great analogy, going into sports and having to relearn something, like, because you have to go to the foundation of the body mechanics and how things operate. And the cool part about, the teachings from these medicines is that they will teach you universal law and natural order, because now you can understand how this works. Now you can understand how to navigate your life through these pathways of, okay, if I resist, it will persist, right? But there's also this part, like, where you have to take in this control seat with yourself. Okay, you have the power within to change anything you want. For me, like, affirmations were one of the main factors that changed my pathway of my life. And I would speak things into existence, and I know my words have power. And so one of the things I would say was, I have dominion over my mind. And that really took me to a powerful place with myself, and to accept the things I cannot change. Because if I start resisting and trying to fight something I can't change, okay, that's something that's beyond my capacity. And now I'm creating more stress for myself and resistance and constriction. But the things I can change, the way I feel, the way I think, the way I perceive reality, that can change.
Yeah, I think it's important to create a positive inner dialogue just throughout the day. Like I said, not just having that positive thought about that thing, but like for my son, I go back to that. I'm trying to give him the skills that maybe I didn't have to learn. And I remember my point. I'm going to come back to this about learning skills for prevention. That's what we're getting back to. Is every morning we have him say his morning mantra. And it's, he says, I am safe and loved. I am happy and healthy. I will be kind today. I'm a good kid. I am blessed. I am smart. I believe in myself. And every single morning he says that, because I think most people believe your mind tells your body what to do, and it's a two-way street. Your body can also tell your mind how to think. They've proven just by smiling, it helps you feel happier. The muscles in your face help release the endorphins that make you feel better. Yeah. You can go for a walk and you get your body moving and it makes your mind feel better. And that brings me back to the point that I had forgotten about. We have all of this stuff out here to help treat people, but Benjamin Franklin said an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. So why are we not doing more to prevent it from happening in the first place? Right. How do you do that? Well, we have all these tools like breath work and meditation and I'm forgetting all the tools, but all your grounding tools and going for a walk and exercise. And we all know exercise is great for tension release, but what about all the other mindfulness and gratitude and all the other mindfulness practices? Why aren't we teaching that in academy? Why are we not giving these kids the tools to cope with it? Because like I said, most of us are coming into this field a little fucked up. Most of us didn't come into this field with great coping mechanisms. And now you're going to go doing CPR on a 2-year-old. How do you cope with that? Right. I really do think it should be a part of the curriculum for Firefighter 1. You're going into an academy. Let's do a whole session on nutrition, how to feed your body, on physical fitness, which most people coming in are ex-athletes or at least pretty physical, and mindfulness practices to help your body cope, to help your mind cope with the stuff you're going through. And that brings me to another point. So I have found through my own experience that while adrenal fatigue syndrome is not an actual diagnosis in the naturopathic world, it is. Right. You stay in constant fight or flight and you're constantly stress. Everyone knows stress messes with your body and all your chemistry, and hormones are like a pulley system, right? You pull one little bit here and it messes everything else up. And what I have found is that in the morning, people think cortisol is horrible. In the morning, you're supposed to be between 12 and 14. I don't know what the units are. 12 and 14 is where most people should be in the morning to help you wake up and get going. I was at 1.4. I had just burned my body out to where I just didn't have any more. So it was why I was tired all the time. So here you're doing all of this mindfulness practice to be happy. And yet physically, your body isn't able to cope because you've damaged it. You've damaged your endocrine system. You've damaged your hormones. I think my testosterone was like 11. So it's to be like 150 or something like that. Guys are like 300. Right. So it just kind of messed everything up.
Well, I think guys are supposed to be 650 and like that's normal.
Well, the normal range is 300 and 900. So they have like in the Western medicine world, it's like 300 and 900, which is ridiculous that someone your age should theoretically be okay if you're in the same range as a 90-year-old man. I'm not a big fan of Western medicine for lots of reasons. They like to put everyone into a box. And the standard has changed over the last 50 years because the average level of testosterone in men has diminished over the last 50 years. So instead of it recognizing that it's an issue, they've just lowered the standard. So the point I'm trying to make is your body physically can be damaged from all of the stress of depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress. So what do you do about that? How do you help heal your body? How do you use nutrition? And I'm actually getting I'm in a certification program from UCSD for integrative nutrition, trying to help figure this out. Yeah. Because how do you find the energy again to go out and play with your child and to be happy and enjoy life if physically you're tired all the time from the physical damage to your body from the chronic stress? And I think that's something people need to be aware of while you're doing all of this work and you're healing your trauma mentally and emotionally and spiritually. Maybe the vessel that's holding it all together is not whole, is not healed, and maybe it's not capable of matching the healing you've done with your mind and your spirit. Just to be aware of that.
No, I'm so glad you're bringing this up because I've been looking into all the research with testosterone levels for men. And I think IAFF put out this research that, I forget the numbers. It was super high. It was like over 80% of low testosterone amongst men. But I am curious, just as, if you don't mind answering this question for women, how has it affected your hormone levels in relation to like your mood. And because my girlfriend tells me all about like her cycle, and I've learned so much about, you know, the luteal phase and when she's in a low, and like this is super interesting to me because it helps me learn, you know, like her stages in her monthly menses cycle. But if you're, you know, working in a high stress environment, your cycle gets turned off or just completely dysregulated.
Well, mine was completely off. Like they call it exercise induced amenorrhea.
Whoa.
But it was also probably stress induced and your sleep deprivation and all the stuff that goes into it. And your body just kind of goes, yeah, no, we're good. And so it shuts down completely. That's what my body did.
Whoa.
And that's not uncommon.
For how long?
Oh, years.
Whoa.
Years. Yeah. Which this is not a fertility podcast, so I won't get into all that. But we're talking about hormones. I mean, women are a great example because we do have the cycles and we have hormones that go all over the place, and or not all over the place, but we have the cycles. They go up and they go down, and it's. I did a spit test where you do it 4 times a day, and they tested my dopamine, my serotonin, GABA, and all of this different stuff, and everything was low. So when everything's low, what they recognized is that there's something wrong with the pituitary gland, and they put me on pituitropin, and I was on all this stuff. I'm still working with a naturopath trying to get it all, and everything is good where it is. Yeah. Now the question is, I don't want to be on 27 supplements, natural supplements for the rest of my life. I would really like to taper down. Can my body sustain it now? But you got to get to a point where, okay, now everything's where it should be. And now I'm feeling better and we're healed emotionally and mentally and everything's good. So how do you taper back down? And I'm still working through that process. But the fact is, physically, my body was so messed up from being in such a stress state for so long that it did take outside help beyond just meditation and breath work. Right. Like I had to go and see a naturopath who was able to say, yeah, you're way out of range. And a normal doctor would have seen it too, that you're not doing, I just didn't want to take artificial stuff. I wanted to take natural stuff. And so, and now I'm much better. I feel better. But when your hormones are off, like your sex drive is down, your skin changes, your hair falls out. I mean, you have all these physical changes to your body when your hormones are messed up. They run everything. And, it's just important to remember that if you're depressed and you're doing all the work, and don't go into the victim mindset of I'm never going to get better. Right. Look at all aspects, be holistic. The whole body needs healing.
Yeah. I mean, I knew, there are women in the fire service had to have if my testosterone's getting all fucked up, I mean, their estrogen's got to be all out of whack too, you know? But I didn't know it got to that extent. I knew something would have happened because of just how hard it is, and how everything just gets completely dysregulated within your nervous system. You know, we have to make a conscious effort in like understanding how the biological system works until you have symptoms that arise that are showing you something. You know, I think the factors of not feeling good in your body is one of the main precursors to mental health issues. Because if you're in chronic pain, for sure, like how are you supposed to operate mentally? Now you're just sitting in pain all the time. You're not feeling good in your body. How are you supposed to feel good? Right. Fuck. Like I had chronic pain issues for such a long time, and I'm still working out reversing some of this tension I carry in my body from just clenching all the time
and guarding
and protecting myself. You know, but I didn't know, you know, I was doing this shit since I was 19 and just not sleeping for fucking 10 years. You know, like I had to unlearn how to do this stuff. And luckily I found some health gurus who were teaching me like, you know, some gut health stuff and how gut health produces more serotonin than anything else in your body. And it produces
second brain.
Yeah. It's this portal within yourself that produces like this way of knowing intuitively with yourself as well. So luckily I've come across some gurus who help me understand the mind, body, spirit, and being able to really integrate the balance between those three things. But man, if I didn't know any of that stuff, you know, I'd still be at the bars drinking and eating fried foods all the time, and I'd be fucking really sick.
It should be part of an academy. This is how you can eat healthy to stop cancer. You know, one of the biggest killers of firefighters, heart disease, cancer, lack of sleep.
And suicide.
Yeah. Sleep, seriously. Sleep is not underrated, y'all. Sleep is a big deal. And we don't get enough of it in the fire service. And then when you go home, you're not really asleep when you're at the firehouse. People don't understand that. Oh, if you didn't have any calls, we're not really asleep. We were talking earlier about how My trauma is getting stuck on a call, having to go to the bathroom at 2 a.m. I hated that. And so I had trained myself to get up every hour or two to go to the bathroom just so I wouldn't get stuck at a call. And that stuck with me. I'm not getting good sleep. Even at home, I'm up every hour or two because I just still have that trauma of getting stuck somewhere and having to go to the bathroom. As ridiculous as that sounds. Yeah. But sleep is a big deal. We actually have a woman who does sleep research for the Naval Postgraduate Academy up in Monterey. And we're working with her and some of her research because she has the military side of it. And we're going to get her to do some more research on the fire side of it because it's a big deal. Sleep is a big deal. Yeah. It messes with your hormones. It messes with your mood and your whole body's ability to heal. And that goes into nutrition as well. The stuff that you're eating, your mind is where most of your serotonin, or your gut is where most of your serotonin is made. So if you're not eating the right stuff, you're not actually making enough serotonin. And then you can't be happy. Like literally the stuff you're eating can help you feel happier if you have the right gut biome and you're eating the right stuff, because that's your second mind. Most of your hormones are made right here. How many of you know how to eat to support that?
Yeah, I mean, my theory is that we're getting poisoned, by the government to make us sick. It's like, it's a whole nother topic, but I'm going to get into it. Don't worry. I'm making an episode that we're going to go straight into that. But, one of the doctors that I go to, he tells me about, there's a machine you can do where it scans your palm of your hand. And then it has like these, or you have these headphones on as well. And I think it's from Germany, and it zaps these frequencies into your system. And immediately, if it bounces back, then it shows what kind of parasite you have, what kind of fungal infection you have.
Wow.
Candida overgrowth, all this stuff. And then immediately you can get every single herbal supplement you need to counteract whatever it was. And if we have to face it, like we all have candida overgrowth and, parasites. It's just a common theme. But this thing, like, it helps you know exactly what protozoa to use to counteract the parasite that's inside your body. That's going to be a whole nother ballgame. But interestingly enough,
that's over my head.
Right. So interestingly enough, and I this doctor was just telling me about it, and I thought it was fucking interesting, right? Like, you can get this machine that tells you exactly the whatever it is in your body that's causing the imbalances. We pretty went off a different pathway here of talking, but fuck it, like all this stuff is so important. How it's
all connected.
It's all connected without a doubt.
About healing the mind, but what good is a healthy mind if it's in a shot body that's in pain that can't physically feel happiness?
What was that quote about the wounded dog bites back? What was that?
Hurt dogs bite. Hurt dogs bite. That's from Dr. Andrea Lucy.
Damn, that's good.
Yeah,
I like that one. I think we're gonna close up here.
Okay.
But thank you so much, Angela, for your
so
work.
much for having us.
And just, I don't know, I'm impressed by, the way you showed up for others, through your own healing. And that's what this is about, is like, we have to go through our own healing before we can help others. Mm-hmm. It's really amazing to witness and see your presence. You're such a bright light. And thank you so much for coming here. I know you drove down from up North California, and like you made a trip down to come here. I mean, it's amazing, and the effort you're making to get this impact on the people who need this healing. So
thank you for making the platform available so that we can access to get it out there. Because again, part of the issue in the beginning was, where do you go to get this?
Yeah. And
so the more we can get the word out there to let people know that this is an avenue. So thank you for providing that for everyone.
So if people want to get a hold of you, the S.I.R.E.N project, how do they do that?
You can go to our website, which is thesirenproject.org. And there will be all the contact information there. We have a direct email for questions and applications and just information in general. All
right, cool. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for listening in. And this has been a very special episode. And, I'm just always looking at anything and everything that could help. It may not work for you, but it may work for someone else who's struggling. And that's the whole point here, is just to get all information out there and getting all versions of the truth to help us rediscover ourselves and find this pathway of healing, to where we're not having a phone call from a friend or a text from a friend and say, hey man, one of our buddies committed suicide. We got to show up and listen to those bagpipes once again can't happen any longer. There's healing that's out there. There's means of finding some type of restitution for all this. And there's a revolution that's happening within, this field of those who have been hurt, who want to find a pathway to help others. And this is where this is at right now. We're in this crisis. It's not going to be a crisis any longer. So I just want to make sure everyone knows, like, be open to all this stuff and listen with an open heart and open mind. Thank you so much for listening. Frontline Behavioral Wellness is our team member and sponsor, and they have a hotline 661-877-7241 that is confidential and is dedicated to first responders and firefighters, police officers, and veterans. If you need some serious help, whether in a crisis or if you just need a little help, someone to talk to, they have a peer support group program, and get you locked and loaded on whatever you need. Thank you so much for listening. If you can, give us some ratings on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts, please do so. We need all the support we can get. Thank you so much. All right, everybody.